In this wipe, we pulled off a seriously bold move. We took the NPC clan leader hostage. While he was clueless about what was going down, we prepped and pulled off a stealthy raid on their resource stash. Once we made it inside, we carefully picked through every nook and cranny, taking every last bit of sulfur we could find. Me and Harry decided to sneak into an US server while most of the clans were still snoozing in Dreamland. When I hopped onto the server, I was surrounded by these massive bases already built up everywhere. It was wild. After walking just about 100 meters, I ran into my buddy and we teamed up right away. When I pulled up the map, I was shook to see a huge GDC written all over it. It was clear as day that a big clan had settled here, and it looked like we were about to face some serious competition. Our goal for today is to gather intel on the different groups that are controlling this virtual space. My first major find was a tugboat with some dudes on it. To get any resources out of them, we had to craft handmade pistol. It was our only shot at success. Time was running out. They could bail at any moment, and our chances of scoring that loot were slipping away fast. Now we had to creep up carefully, staying in the shadows to avoid drawing any attention. The situation became clear. It looked like they were either moving resources from the tugboat or the other way around. A few minutes later, the guy came back and we decided to ambush. While Harry was carefully picking up his prey, I managed to show up nearby and promptly joined him. It felt like everything was under control and we could just bounce, but suddenly things took a wild turn. This was far from a loss because now we had a new mission: figure out what's hiding in their base and take it over. There could be a massive stash of loot inside, and we might just get rich off one metal wall. So we set off to roam the map, like we planned from the start, to figure out where to grab some weapons and our first explosive. The first place we decided to explore was the winter biome. As soon as we reached the first house, we immediately heard the echo of explosions coming from the direction of the mining outpost. Oh. Looks like we've got a perfect chance to snag some explosives. After he destroyed the TC, we had a clear shot to climb up to the roof. With that, we scored our first stash of explosives and weapons, marking a crucial step toward making our plans a reality. I can't figure out how it happened, but I was lucky that Harry was nearby. If it weren't for Harry, we might have lost everything. When I got back, I decided to focus on building up the house to prevent such incidents in the future. The resources here weren't as much as we hoped, but hey, it's better than leaving empty-handed. Plus, we did manage to snag some explosives, so that's a win. Now that everything seemed under control, out of nowhere, a weird sound came from around the corner. That was the last time that guy came around, cause right after, we vanished. But now, we had weapons, explosives, and building materials. However, breaking through those metal walls and the countless doors of that seaside base needed at least 3 times more explosives. We decided not to waste any time and headed straight to the outpost to grab the missing materials for building up the base. It was the only way to keep our loot safe. Everything we needed was finally gathered, and now we could chill and get started on building our first base. The spot for our house turned out to be far from perfect. During peak times, the server hit around 400 players, and as an experienced player with over 10,000 hours, I knew that living right across from Outpost on a crowded server was a death wish. So we came up with a plan to move, but first we had to grab all the resources from the coastal house. Harry took on the risky farming while I headed to the gym, gearing up for the challenges ahead. After returning home from the gym, I immediately got to work unloading the furnaces that Harry had set up. Gradually, I began studying the available explosives like bean grenades and satchels. Once I wrapped up the theoretical plans, I moved on to practice, crafting gunpowder and explosives right in the heart of the city in full view of unsuspecting passersby.
Some scrap, you know?
And once all the explosives were ready, we faced the task of making our way to the other side of the map. Since we didn't have the necessary scrap for air transport, we decided to take the most dangerous route, the subway, which was crawling with campers armed with grenades and bazookas. At the very least, we were lucky in the subway. Despite the gloomy corridors, we managed to reach our destination safely without encountering any danger. Finally, the time for the raid had come, and we were ready to uncover the secrets hidden within the walls of this mysterious house. In this house, we found a ton of valuable resources, and we urgently needed to reinforce it before the anti-raiders showed up.
Crazy on that, I see.
We increased our supplies about 5-fold, and while gunfire echoed outside our new home, I quickly stashed everything essential in the bunker and headed back to our first base. Gathering the remnants of sulfur from all the furnaces, I found that we had just over 2 row of ore left, which would allow us to blow through a metal wall as well. But the endless shootouts continued to rage around the captured base, and we couldn't transport our resources safely. While we waited, reinforcing the base's defenses, several strangers suddenly appeared and began blasting through our wall.
Наши три пацаны. Проход чекайте двери быстро. Один хуйню двери.
Somehow, I managed to stash all the most valuable loot before they broke through the wall. Now leaving it like that wasn't an option, and we decided to fight back. It was time to defend our base at all costs. Incredibly, we managed to fend off that raid, but before I could even gather the loot from the last enemy, those guys were already back. Iha. If it weren't for Harry, everything would have been lost. After all that went down, those guys realized their dirty tricks weren't gonna work on us anymore, so they decided to hide in shame. But since their raids could go on forever, we quickly packed up the most important loot and migrated to the other side of the outpost. After finishing up the new hideout, I went back to our old base and left a few notes for our little raid lovers. Meanwhile, we wasted no time unloading all the loot from the raided bunker by the water and headed straight to the lighthouse to recycle the gathered components. We gathered a bit more scrap than we expected since Harry managed to farm some in the metro before recycling. Now we had enough resources to research explosives. Upon returning to the city, we were welcomed like true pirates. Bread, wine, and vibrant stories awaited us, especially from our old friend Apache.
Fernando.
Apache.
Fernando, remember me from
Apache, come to
yesterday?
me. Apache.
You remember? No, I was naked. We were outside that big base. And you guys hit me with a rock.
It was a guy we had met just the day before, but for him, as we learned, it was already yesterday since we hadn't slept for over 15 hours. Anyway, he told us about who lived in the massive base at X-17 and another clan, GDC, that had logged off the server, leaving their lackeys to control a giant excavator. This information proved to be a valuable resource for us, and in gratitude, I generously gifted Apache some scrap.
Oh my
No,
gosh,
no.
thank you.
Ready you, bro.
Thank you.
You scam me.
Thank you.
After that, we hurried back home, filled with enthusiasm and ready to start researching explosives. Having wrapped up all our tasks, my partner Harry and I decided to set off to explore the giant excavator. Rumor had it that we could reach it either by air or through the metro. Since we didn't have access to the first option, we set out on our journey by train. When I arrived at the giant excavator, my attention was immediately drawn to two guys busy with the digging. It was obvious they weren't the owners. According to our intel, those guys were asleep at that time. We easily took down the first guy, but the second one had positioned himself at the top of the excavator. We had to approach him cautiously. One wrong move could cost us everything. Weirdly enough, we made it to the top without catching any attention. We were moving so quietly, like shadows slipping through the dark. These guys definitely weren't the real owners of the excavator. They didn't have the GDC tag like the actual crew. We realized they were just temporary visitors, and that gave us the upper hand. Now, all the resources we had gathered were in my backpack, and all that was left was to find the transportation these guys had used to get here. We knew time was running out. Soon, the real owners might return, and escaping would become much more difficult. It was unclear who these people were, but fortunately we managed to find some hidden transportation. At last we were able to leave this dangerous place, taking all the gathered resources with us. Upon arriving at the outpost, I hid the heli in a secret spot. With the helicopter under our control, we could easily fly around the map in search of the NPC clan that Apache had mentioned. According to him, there were about 12 to 15 members living somewhere deep in the desert biome. As I flew past the clan at age 17 and various houses, I spotted an unusual base carved into the rock opposite the military tunnels. But the NPC clan's base was just getting built. Me and Harry wanted to hit them before they could finish their base, but to do that we had to smelt sulfur, which is what I did. While our sulfur was slowly smelting, we decided not to waste any time and headed out for another fly around the map. Not far from the NPC clan's half-built base, we got lucky and found a garage. Looks like the desert biome turned out to be the most crowded spot on the server. Just 5 minutes into our flight, we ran into a heli, floating in the sky from that same direction. When Harry got killed, all the puzzle pieces finally came together. It was the NPC clan, just like Apache said. Their base was behind the military tunnels. Now we figured out where their garage was, cause just 5 minutes earlier we flew right past that spot. Flying over to the garage, we confirmed there was no helicopter there and decided to head back home. After spending around 20 hours in intense gameplay, we were totally wiped out. Every move felt heavy and my thoughts were all over the place. So I decided not to waste any time and camouflaged our base, making sure no one could spot us. With a deep breath, I started building a small garage for the copter, imagining how it would blend into the landscape. With a swift motion, I reinforced the bunker with HQM, securing it from prying eyes. Feeling accomplished, I logged off the server and crashed into a 12-hour bear-like hibernation. The next day, to our surprise, all the resources were still there. Nothing was missing, which was incredible news. We had expected that something might have gone wrong overnight, but our luck seemed to be sticking with us. With a clear head and fresh thoughts, I woke up near the quarry and headed towards the GDC servant's house, which had controlled the area until recently. As it turned out, they had been raided, and now someone else was running the quarry. A car belonging to this new owner stood parked nearby. Inside the car, I was met with a pleasant surprise, a huge stash of valuable resources. To make sure I didn't lose everything, I drove the car back home, and that morning a sudden thought struck me. They added handcuffs to Rust. An idea sparked. What if we could somehow capture the leader of the NPC clan, cuff him, and take him hostage? However, at that point, we had no information about them. Oh, gather intel, we needed to set up closer to their territory. So we started collecting resources and preparing to move into the desert biome. By the way, you can join my Discord through the link in the description. There, you'll find behind-the-scenes moments that didn't make it into this video and much more. But back to the game. I wasn't quite sure how our new base should look since we've been playing this entire wipe purely on enthusiasm. Ideas started to come to me only now, so I decided to trust my instincts and got to building. The first part of our plan was successfully completed, and now we moved on to the final stage, transferring all the resources from the old base to the new one. Now we could move on to the second stage, determining whether the NPC clan truly resided beyond the military tunnels. However, this time our plans were thwarted by the SAM site, which knocked us off course. Perhaps the crash was a blessing in disguise, as unexpectedly, one of the NPC clan's neighbors appeared in our path. This was an unfamiliar resident of the village. After that, fate brought us to a vehicle that initially chased us, but then, as if by the whims of destiny, we found ourselves on its tail. Ultimately, this peculiar encounter led us straight to the home of the NPC clan. The clan rapidly gained power, and within just 6 hours, their dwelling transformed into a true fortress, embedded in the rock. Their vehicle vanished right before our eyes, but in the blink of an eye, Harry takes out one of them right at the entrance of the house. Their car truly vanished, but fate is a peculiar force that inevitably guides you to where you are meant to be. Hearing the footsteps, I immediately realized they were looting the military tunnels, and most likely, the vehicle was right at the entrance. We waited for them until sunset, but no one showed up. Perhaps they heard us and were scared off, but the vehicle was far more important to us. Therefore, I decided to take it for myself. The car was packed with valuable resources. In short, acquiring it was the perfect outcome for us. With it, I could safely mine at the quarry. Moreover, we needed to assert our status as the new owners of this territory. So, I grabbed some diesel fuel and headed to the excavator to start its engine. "15 minutes passed and I had the sulfur in my backpack, but no one showed up. Everything seemed to go pretty smoothly, but on my way home I heard water starting to flood my apartment in real life. After that pretty awkward incident at the quarry, a random thought popped into my head. For the first time in my life, I decided to mess with pipes and set up automatic furnaces. Turned out the job was pretty simple. Once it's set up, you can count on it running smoothly forever. While I was busy hooking pipes to the furnaces, Harry scouted around near the NPC clan and found out they had headed to the military tunnels. With our sulfur still cooking, we decided to try intercepting them while they were loaded with all their loot. We waited for them until late at night, but somehow they managed to sneak past us and get into the house while a helicopter was flying toward their direction. A helicopter landed on their house. It was clearly preparation for a raid. To delay them, we headed to the car, planning to drive back home, grab a few high-velocity rockets, and sabotage their plans. But fate had other ideas. As soon as we reached the car, the NPC clan suddenly took off in their helicopter. Without hesitation, we decided to follow them, determined to see where they'd land next. As I watched the NPCs trying to land on the neighboring clan's territory, Harry silently climbed up the cliff. Meanwhile, the guys on the helicopter made their fatal mistake. I couldn't figure out what they were after, but I decided to keep pursuing them on my own. Now everything became clear. They simply decided to chase me down with the intent to take me out. I certainly wanted to leave, but it was impossible, so I accepted the fight. I can't understand how I managed to survive, but Harry was already flanking them from behind. At first it seemed that their gear held no value, but when I peered inside I was struck with genuine shock. Now it was crucial to leave as quickly as possible, as all of this had unfolded just 200 meters from their home. Having dropped all the resources in the house, I immediately woke up in the car and was astonished to see the entire clan gathered together. We were close to achieving justice, but we had no intention of stopping there. This was merely a warm-up, thus we set off to get closer to their base to scout the surroundings and launch a counterattack. Upon landing at their base, we found only dead bodies, which suddenly filled me with doubt. It seemed that all the inhabitants had hurriedly hidden in their garage. Finally, after repelling the last wave of attacks, we managed to reach their farm and see firsthand all the changes that had taken place there. Inspecting their farm made it clear that they had hidden their resources there. Just a few hours ago it had been stone and now it was entirely metal. Therefore, we returned home and gathered all the explosives we had. I was certainly lucky, I could have easily died.
Алло, ребят, здесь лута не осталось. Вы чё рейдите, долбоёбы? Тут нихуя нет, как бы.
He says anything, it means there's definitely something inside. Got it. Those guys decided to despawn everything after their defeat. They were clearly trying to make a move, but their efforts were in vain. We simply sealed off their garage, cutting off any escape route, and with a sense of accomplishment, headed home. We even placed a sleeping bag for one of them to see how our clever plan would play out. Since my voice isn't recorded, believe me, I just told him he's our hostage for the rest of his life. After the entire NPC clan left the server, our story didn't end there. We tracked where they went and continued to watch their new adventures unfold. If you're curious to see how it all plays out, make sure to like, leave a comment, and don't forget to check out my Discord channel for updates.